And they're saying, oh, well, that must be a key word. But on the same day, you had Chuck Schumer and other Democrats get together and reveal a whole bunch of new slogans and their new way forward, and saying that they actually have to take responsibility for their loss because of their candidate and not because of Russia. Do you think that that was like the wrong day to do that?
No. I think Democrats have to operate on their own timetable.
And I know you wrote about this in your column today.
I did. I wrote about it in the Hill today. But I mean, the Democrats need to develop their own message, because what's quite clear is that a substantial number of voters, not just Trump voters, really don't plan to vote in 2018 on the basis of opposition to Donald Trump. They want to see something from the Democrats that says, here's what the Democrats stand for. So I don't think that it's necessarily bad messaging. I mean, it could get lost, but how do you compete with what's going on at the White House? I mean, it's impossible for the Democrats, never going to have the kind of blood sport scent that you have. And today you have here the brother-in-law looks like he's shoving the brother, his brother-in-law, Trump Jr., under the bus, as well as you have a situation where, you know, despite what Johnny Cochran here said,
Jesse Cochran.
If the glove doesn't fit,
yeah, you must have quit. Right. But despite that, I mean, there's so many questions left open. I mean, he says, oh, yeah, you know, I got together and I don't know what we were talking about. It seemed so clear to me. I never read the email chain. Never looked and saw that my brother-in-law was saying, oh, yeah, I'd love to get information from Russia, dirt on Hillary. And then he says, oh, you know what? Yeah, I met with that Russian ambassador. So what if I said, let's go over to the Russian embassy and have a secure channel, a back channel communication? Oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. It was just a one-time thing. This was not a good day. He's back on his heels. He's on the defensive. And, you know, there was a carefully tailored message, as Kimberly said, written by his lawyer. But the whole thing looks to me like, you know, everybody pointing fingers, if not taking out knives, in the circle that is the Trump White House.
Speaking about taking out knives, we have a soundbite from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, and then we'll get Kennedy your take on this. Ooh.
Well, the overwhelming majority of Democrats that I work with understand that there's a cloud of illegitimacy that's hanging over the White House.
Appears as a special prosecutor who actually is searching. He's in search of some kind of crime. And that, so far, nothing of Russian collusion. So now he's trying to delve and look for something and fish. And that's not how it's supposed to work, for some kind of financial misdeeds, something that he thinks perhaps that is wrong, because that's some of the background of his expertise and the team that he's brought in with him.
So you don't think the email in which Junior says, oh, love it, please send, Russia has information, Hillary, please send it. And then you have Kushner seeing that email chain, or he says not seeing it but ignoring it, and then showing up at the meeting along with the campaign manager. It doesn't.
Juan, you never read the bottom of an email chain. I've sent you so many emails. You just read the subject line. You ignore everything down there. Come on.
To that point, it is a little bit amateurish, and I also think that's why Don Jr. doesn't have a job in the White House.
Oh.
That is also an interesting point, Kennedy. But we're going to keep going because we have something exciting coming up. New questions are being raised about Attorney General Jeff Sessions after President Trump criticizes him in a new tweet. Are changes on the horizon? We've got Ed Henry. He's going to join us live next.
Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so. I had no improper contacts. I have not relied on Russian funds for my businesses. And I have been fully transparent in providing all requested information. Donald Trump had a better message and ran a smarter campaign, and that is why he won. Suggesting otherwise ridicules those who voted for him.
President Trump took yet another swipe at Attorney General Jeff Sessions, calling him, quote, beleaguered in a tweet this morning. During a photo op with interns at the White House today, the president was asked about the Attorney General.
Mr. President, should Jeff Sessions resign?
Face emoji. Also today, an Obamacare showdown is brewing. President Trump is on offense as the Senate is set to hold a procedural vote to take up the health care bill tomorrow.
The question for every senator, Democrat or Republican, is whether they will side with Obamacare's architects, which have been so destructive to our country, or with its forgotten victims. Any senator who votes against starting debate is telling America that you are fine with the Obamacare nightmare, which is what it is.
Joining us here on the set, Chief Ed Henry, and there he is. All right, welcome to the 5 or the 6.
So excited.
As you would have it.
You're like the 6th Beatle.
5.5.
So a lot of
That's a low blow. You know what? We should say that now that you said that. On Friday night on the 5, I was watching.
Yes,
You took
yes.
something I reported for your weekend show, and you said, my people in Washington told me. And I just called you out. And I will say you were honest during the break to say, you know, Henry, I stole that from you.
You know, Henry, you're getting a little cocky recently. We didn't want to give you a huge head. I wanted to make it more anonymous. It was an anonymous source.
Oh,
Let's get back to the issue.
But we'll give you all the credit as long as you do a good job.
Yes, it was
here,
Ed
of
Henry.
course.
Look.
So a lot of breaking news today. There's a couple of things. Obviously, there's one thing I want to get to that just is breaking now about Senator John McCain. Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, we're hearing that Senator John McCain now, and we've confirmed, is coming back tomorrow to vote in the Senate. This is a key procedural vote. All it is really is to get to the actual debate. They don't even know which bill it's going to be. Is it going to be repeal only? Is it going to be repeal and replace? Something in repeal only? Is it going to be repeal and replace? Something in between? Mitch McConnell is obviously between a rock and a hard place right now just to get something moving. And this is very dramatic, obviously, for Senator John McCain, who just had surgery to deal with brain cancer. They were expecting him to take at least a few weeks off to recuperate. Obviously, you think family comes first, his health comes first, and I would assume, we don't know all of this because it's just breaking, that this was done in consultation with his doctors and his family to make sure that even just traveling to Washington is going to be okay for him.
I wouldn't be surprised if he flies the plane. I'm not kidding. Like, he's really tough. He knows how important this is.
Maverick, you know, all the way.
How crazy would it be if he flew all the way to Washington to vote no?
And kind of stick it to the president. Look, I think the other thing here is that the president, that argument you played in that soundbite, it's sort of like what took so long for the White House from a communication standpoint to figure it out. That, I think, is his best argument with fellow Republicans, which is that if you won't even let us move forward on a procedural vote that nobody outside Washington understands, we don't even know which bill it's going to be, but just actually have a debate.
They could have had him on talk radio all last week with that exact same message and forcing the issue. But it looks like they're going to get it.
Yeah, you and I spoke on the radio today about, and you made a great point, which is that basically, you know, why wasn't the president on the phone, talk radio in states like West Virginia, where you have, you know, senators on the fence,
With the
Alaska,
messaging, right.
and message that? Because, frankly, how can Republican senators justify not voting to have a debate?
It's a little bit of squeeze play on him with the
Absolutely.
constituents.
I mean, you could debate and you could say, look, Susan Collins or
Well,
whoever,
frankly,
I don't like the Medicaid cuts. I don't like this.
Honestly, Ed,
if
you phrase it that way, like, how can the Democrats not vote for it too? I mean,
Sure.
that should be 100-0 in the Senate. Like, at least let's start debate.
If they, you're absolutely
Chuck
right.
Schumer says he wants a debate.
But Chuck Schumer says this bill is rotten to its core. He says this bill is so bad and so toxic. So wouldn't you want to cast a little sunlight on this legislation so people can see what you see? And if not, then you're an empty, hypocritical coward. I'm going to go for the latter here.
Well, Mitch McConnell said last week, I was at the White House when he came out after meeting with the president and other Republican senators. He said, look, Chuck Schumer and everyone else can amend this thing to death, basically. I mean, you can have dozens and dozens of amendments.
Yep.
So I think you're right. They should call the Democrats out, and as well as the Republicans, you're absolutely right, and say, Democrats, like Chuck Schumer, keep saying, we want to fix Obamacare. We don't like this bill that the Republicans are pushing, but we want to make it better. Call them out on that, because, in fact, every time when I was covering President Obama, they tried to make even the smallest change to Obamacare. No, because he knew it was like pulling a piece of string and the suit was going to come undone. So they would have no changes, even reasonable changes, none.
Are they going to get this thing repealed? Because Dana made another bold prediction just now that it was going to happen.
Well, I think this vote tomorrow is going to happen.
You really? Okay, so the vote happens, but then it doesn't really get repealed.
I made that prediction on Friday.
I don't know.
Stole it.
That was your source? She was the source.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Washington. Jesse's Washington.
Some people in Washington told me.
That's what I told
You
you.
really feel good about that?
I do. You seem to be a little bitter about it. I don't want to spend the knife.
Let me just jump in here and quickly say that I think that the Republicans have not demonstrated that they have any better idea than Obamacare so far in either the House bill or the Senate bill. And now
Well, anything is better than Obamacare.
all it's about now is, can Trump claim a victory? They're trying to just cover up. But let me just move on to the news of the night, which is this business about the president saying that the attorney general is beleaguered.
Yeah.
And to anybody who is watching, it looks like the president's trying to force out his attorney general without pulling the plug on him.
Yeah, and what was the context? He said beleaguered attorney general should be investigating Crooked H or Crooked Hillary, his old phrase from the campaign.
Yeah.
You know, so like he's dragging that back, and it's very clear what that shows to me is that this is a president who is frankly angry as attorney general
Frustrated.
for recusing himself, and we've
And just
already
fire
hashed
him.
that out.
I think like letting him twist in the wind. You know, this guy. I understand you're mad at him, Mr. President, but like. He was the first one to go out for you. He really stuck his neck out.
First senator to
he
swear
was
in.
really good in his confirmation hearings. He's been there actually implementing the policies better than any other department across the entire government. And if you really can't stand him that much, then just cut him loose. In the Rocky Mountain News, my gosh, that's a long time ago. That paper doesn't even exist anymore. In the Washington Post today, there's a story that just posted that Robert Costa reports that it says someone close to Trump says that he was asking today, well, how will it play in the conservative media if I fire Sessions?
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you actually look at some of the conservative media, it's like, it's not going to be good.
No,
they like him.
And the twist in this story today
Like
was Rudy
the South.
Giuliani, former mayor of New York, former prosecutor, very accomplished in that regard, said, you know what, Sessions was right to recuse himself, which was a surprise because people were talking about the possibility that Trump would name Giuliani to replace Sessions because he believed Giuliani.
But Giuliani was also an early adapter. I mean, he was also one of the people very early on in the campaign.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, particularly Rudy Giuliani, were surprised to not see him be part of this administration in a much higher post. But as a civil libertarian,
Part of this.
I will be delighted to see Jeff Sessions.
Oh, well, I know that that's true.
Leave.
But there's a lot of...
He doesn't like weed, is that why, Kennedy?
The other name,
He doesn't like the
Civil
dope.
asset, that and civil asset forfeiture.
Oh, yes.
Those
Of course,
two
yeah,
issues.
that's like I read Playboy for the article. Civil asset forfeiture.
They're also talking about Ted Cruz.
Right.
But also, how many times have we heard Priebus is out, Bannon is out? There's been so many mainstream media stories about that, and they're still around. So we
Hold your
also have
breath.
to put this with a grain of salt.
Whoa,
Don't hold your breath. You want him to hold his breath?
No, hold your breath because you won't have to hold it for that long. But
Sounds like you have some
She's
insight.
got sources
in Washington.
What do your people in Washington say?
I call the psychic
You have
friends
people-
network. But I will say this about AG. If you think way back when, and you should remember this, that Rudy Giuliani was one of the first people that actually the president wanted for AG.
Yeah.
Another person that he favors is Mukasey.
Yeah.
But then Jeff Sessions, again, one of the first people to campaign for him, beloved in the South, and has really tried to do a good job for the president, so it's a complex situation. But I agree with Dana. If you're upset and you don't like somebody in a position like that, then you've got to step up and say,
like stop
"That's
humiliating him and just do it.
But do you think he doesn't want to fire him because
then
he already asked him to get rid of Mueller, and if he fires him, then he might testify?
I think that
Sessions already offered his resignation.
If you fire him, you have to have a replacement ready to go, and I don't think necessarily
He's
that
very
they have
happy
that.
with
Who is why they
Newsom, with
respect
Kelly,
like Mukasey.
with Mattis, and with
But he doesn't like Rosenstein, so then that's out the window.
There you go.
Yeah, well,
Lots to
Republicans
talk
are in
about.
Baltimore,
All right, we're into
right?
like the 10th block.
I say Waters. He knows a lot of people in Washington.
Ed, I think you should just stay. Thank you so much.
I'll stay the whole hour.
All right, just do it. Don't move. All right, the new White House communications director has a bold plan for plugging leaks to the press. We're going to tell you what it is coming up next. Stay with us.
Just a few days after being named the new White House communications director, Anthony Scaramucci is vowing to clean up shop. At the top of his list, taking, quote, drastic action to stop leaks to the press by offering this ultimatum to the White House staff.
What happens to leakers on your watch? They're going to get fired. I'm just going to make it very, very clear, okay? We're as strong as our weakest leak. So if you guys want to keep leaking, why don't you guys all get together and make a decision as a team that you're going to stop leaking. But if you're going to keep leaking, I'm going to fire everybody.
I can't believe it's taken this long for someone to come in here and say, stop the leaks.
Yeah, and it's bad because you didn't see this kind of problem with the Obama administration. I give them a lot of credit. They ran a tight ship. They didn't have people that were, colluding against the administration and leaking. It's very unfair. You go in there, and, I take public service very seriously, having worked as a prosecutor for so many years in Los Angeles and San Francisco. You go in there, you take oath, you keep your confidences, you do not leak. It's just highly improper and unethical. And if you're that kind of person and unethical, you don't belong in the position. So I would take the same approach and attitude. I would want to find out and root out anybody who was trying to undermine the presidency and the government and not do the job properly. They should literally go and get another job, prepare their resume, and I'm sure they know who they are, meaning the people that are leaking, and I know the administration has the names and the list. So
that's right. Where do you think these leaks are coming from? Because I always assumed they were coming from the intelligence community or maybe the State Department. You think it was within the White House?
I think that there are different levels of leaks. Okay,
Correct.
so there are ones about the intelligence community that seem to come from the intelligence community. That's one problem, and that also is a crime. Then you have ones that are possibly coming from whatever the deep state is, like in the bowels of the State Department, so that they're mad about. But I think what he's talking about, Anthony Scaramucci is talking about the White House staff itself, and in particular, he said the communication staff. And I have to tell you, in my experience, the communicators in the press office rarely leak for a couple of reasons. One, they don't really have that much information. Two, they have to clean up all the mess. And three, they have these relationships with reporters that they have to do on the record. So it's very hard to say, oh, I'm on the record and I'm not. Now, if he has the names of them and he wants to fire them, then, okay, so maybe it's whatever. Kimberly's giving me some direction here, so maybe I don't know. I just know that in my experience, the press people usually don't leak. The first person to complain about the leak is often the leaker. The other thing the White House has complained about is the New York Times, for example, uses sourcing like advisors to the White House said. That was the one about the Don Jr. meeting. That one means that it's people outside the White House.
Could be anybody.
Who the president's either talking to or the chief staff is talking to, or they're talking to people at the bar. And then those people are calling the press. So you can't fire them. That actually just requires leadership and direction. And I don't think
somebody's working
forcing
on
something down their throat and saying, like management by fear is one thing, and you can try it that way, but it doesn't engender confidence.
Well, that's how Kennedy runs her show, by fear, correct?
Absolutely.
What do you do to leakers on your show?
Well, we don't have any because they've all been squashed. Like hot cockroaches. And they splattered on the sidewalk, and I like it.
Look at Juan. Juan's terrified.
Hot roaches.
I'm actually really interested in your perspective, because I think one of the things that's vastly different, and this is a very unorthodox White House that's still getting its footing. It's still very early on in this presidency, and I don't think with other parties and past presidents, I think you had a sense of loyalty to party, and I think there's something, there's a disconnect
I'll give you one example. When the health care bill was going down in the Senate, there was something that happened that showed up in the paper saying that the White House is going to say A-OK to a campaign to pressure Dean Heller in Nevada. And I know this reporter who reported it. And they got calls from other parts of the White House saying, do you have any more information on that? Like, where did you get that? Because one part of the White House wasn't talking to the other. That's actually easily fixed by somebody like the communications director or the chief of staff figuring out a way to do some better coordination.
So let me just say, pick up on something Dana said, which is the first person to complain about the leak, most likely the leaker. And in this case,
the leaker's the squeaker.
Scaramucci,
the old axiom.
has a reputation among reporters as being a great leaker. I mean, he was a great leaker.
He just got on the job, so how could he be the leaker?
Oh, no, he campaigns. Previous campaigns, he was a good leaker. So let me just say this. Right now, there's so many factions inside the White House. We saw this demonstrated today when we're talking about Don Jr. versus Kushner. Then you've got, and I think people on the edge like Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, and then you've got Steve Bannon and his policy advisor, all discombobulated by Scaramucci's ascendance.
Yeah.
Everybody is looking out for themselves. Then, don't forget, everybody's lawyered up, including the president. The lawyers have information. Their job is to protect their client, not politics, and they're leaking.
That sounds a lot like fake news, because the sources that I have in the White House says everybody gets along quite swimmingly.
Was that Ed Henry?
Directly ahead. A deadly illegal immigrant smuggling op in Texas reignites the debate on sanctuary cities. Could this horrible tragedy have been prevented? Details up next.
Now an update on a disturbing story we've been following here on the Fox News Channel. A 10th person has died in a Texas tractor-trailer smuggling tragedy. Officials found the truck packed with at least 90 people in sweltering heat outside a San Antonio Walmart yesterday. The driver of that tractor-trailer faces charges for illegally transporting immigrants. If convicted, James Bradley could face the death penalty or life in prison. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is among lawmakers blaming this horror on sanctuary cities.
Those who think sanctuary cities are a great idea, this is what happens. When people think they can come to America illegally because there's an oasis somewhere that they can live in, that just draws them to fall into the clutches of the people who smuggle people across our border.
Goodness gracious, and some of the people involved, children, 4 of the survivors, 4 to 17 years old, Kennedy. What do you make of this?
It absolutely breaks my heart, because here are people who, they want a better life. Right. And they know the risks, they know the stories, and they lost their lives. They died trying to get into this country. And that's what I think about first. And then I think about the people who prey upon them and take their money in these incredibly unsafe conditions. But it just, I mean, for me, it's a testament to how great this country is and what a magnet it is. And for people trying to leave hellholes, unfortunately, this is what they're left with. These are the means, and that means that the system is broken. Something is wrong. There certainly is a disconnect between sanctuary cities and the federal government, but there's also a broken immigration policy in this country that we have to figure out so stuff like this stops happening.
So, in fact, Dana, to pick up on what Kennedy was saying, the people in the truck said that they were expected to pay $5,500 each.
Yep.
That's a lot of money.
They were guaranteed for that money an air-conditioned ride. But the desire to come to the country and to work is so great that they were willing to do this. And they started rocking the truck back and forth to try to get attention. The driver says he didn't know what was in the truck. And I understand apparently that is possible if he picked up a sealed container and then he's driving along and he doesn't know. It does seem a little suspect, though. If you're driving a truck and you don't know what's in it from Laredo to San Antonio, I think that he's probably very vulnerable, and he should be. And I hope that if it's one thing to deal with sanctuary cities, but another also to go after these coyotes and to really ratchet up the penalties for them to try to prevent this behavior. The human condition and human rights is something that we all should care about. It doesn't matter if you're on the southern side of the border or here in America. This really ought to stop.
But just to be clear, it's not the case that the driver, Mr. Bradley, who's from Clearwater, Florida, crossed the border. Apparently, these folks were brought across the Rio Grande and then loaded onto this truck, and then he was told, drive this truck.
Right.
But he's still part of the smuggling operation.
Yes.
And responsible for that car.
Right. And I see what Kennedy says, that America is a magnet for immigrants, but sanctuary cities are a magnet for illegal immigrants. And I think when you put the wall on the border and you defund sanctuary cities, I actually think that's humane. Because I think some of these policies, this open border policy, they don't deter this stuff. They encourage smuggling, and then people die. So if the Democrats are the party of compassion and they want to be the humane party, they can't at the same time, on the other hand, encourage these policies where people are actually dying coming across the border. And these smugglers, they're like modern-day slave traders. It's the same kind of thing where they pile bodies into a hot truck on top of each other and people die. It's the same thing when they did the slave ships. It's disgusting, and I think more people need to get involved to crack down on it because it keeps happening over and over again.
So, Kimberly, there was an intriguing debate between Joaquin Castro, the congressman from Texas, and John Cornyn, the senator from Texas. Castro saying we need to have some compassion, not just make this a political argument, and Cornyn saying it is compassionate to say if we crack down on sanctuary cities, the border, we can stop this kind of loss of life.
Well, they can both have, valid points, but I see it, personally from my perspective in terms of being a prosecutor and seeing what would happen here and people being taken advantage of. Is very dangerous conditions for families and for children. And these are the stories that I would be privy to and aware of, on a daily basis. And that is a serious issue because people are desperate. They want to come over. And if there's a means to do that, and these people prey on them, they prey on them, and look at the situation here with this senseless loss of life. That's why we have to have, it's incumbent upon us and with our, allies and friends and partners in Mexico to work out something that is tenable, that is, yes, compassion, but that respects the laws of our country and ensures the safety of people here and the people in Mexico, right? They should want to make sure that put an end to this too. Follow the laws, apply, go through the process, and we need to make the process more streamlined so that it's fair to everybody.
And so people can immigrate legally and get into the country.
Or work temporarily legally.
Yeah, absolutely. And have solutions like that.
There's a process.
People can work and employers can hire them, and it's above board, so people aren't sacrificing their lives to participate.
In fact, just last week, the president had to issue additional visas for some of the migrant, seasonal workers. And the question is, what happens with E-Verify, with enforcement, so that folks don't think they can get jobs and with fake Social Security numbers and the like.
Right.
Up next, Senator Schumer calls out his fellow Democrat Hillary Clinton in some stunning new remarks. Find out what he said when we return.
Good evening. Good night. Yes. It appears some prominent Democrats are tired of Hillary Clinton's excuses for losing the election. One of them, her former Senate colleague Chuck Schumer, has taken shots at the former Democratic presidential nominee, telling the Washington Post, quote, "When you lose to somebody who has 40% popularity, you don't blame other things. Comey, Russia, you blame yourself." The Senate Minority Leader also doubled down on his party's failures earlier today.
And when you lose elections, as we did in 2014 and 2016, you don't flinch. You don't blink. You look in the mirror and ask, what did we do wrong? The number one thing we did wrong is not present a strong, bold economic agenda to working Americans so that their hope for the future might return again.
Well, that would have been helpful information last November. Shots across the bow at Hillary.
Yeah, crying Chuck's going to turn into dead Chuck after that. It's tough when you go after a hell dog like that. I'd be worried if I were you. The Democrats have the new slogan. It's called the Better Deal. I think they better deal with losing. Because they cash on hand, they have about $3 million. The Republicans have about $45 million. And they said that the reason they lost in the last election is because the voters didn't hear their message. Well, they did hear the message, and they didn't like it. I just don't think the Democrats are believable when they say they're fighting for the middle class, because everybody hears about Trump and Russia and global warming. And they say they now want to be about fighting for the middle class. Well, they had 8 years with the White House, and the middle class got hammered.
Right.
So, like, what do you have to show for it?
Yeah, what do you have to show for it?
Well,
I mean, the bottom line is the bottom line. Democrats don't have a lot of cash on hand. Even Hillary and Bernie both came out swinging against the DNC. And now, Chuck, is he being a little sexist?
Sexist? How's that?
By attacking Hillary in this untoward manner.
Oh, gee, that's sexist. I think he had a point. I mean, it's not only Chuck Schumer. I think you've heard this from David Axelrod and others who've said, gosh, you know, they had a lot of money. They had a tremendous financial advantage over Trump, and they certainly had an unpopular opponent, and they still lost. So I think there's a lot of frustration. But I think, to their credit, they're finally moving forward. I think finally they're now focused on a message that can get traction. It's an economic message about jobs, about wages, about infrastructure.
Is it a centrist message?
It's very centrist, in fact. And so the question is, are you alienating the base? I mean, because there are a lot of people who see blood sport and going after Trump, responding to Trump tweets, delighting in Trump and the Russia probe.
At the top of the show.
Yeah, but I think now this is a more centrist approach, as you were saying. The question is, does it get a response? Obviously, Jesse doesn't think it gets a response because the Republicans always are small government, less taxes. That's pretty easy to understand.
If only.
This message gets immediately mocked.
It used to be.
This message gets immediately mocked by Republicans as sounding like Papa John's, you know, better pizza, better ingredient. So we have a better job plan. But you know what? It may be that this is what the Democrats need.
The Democrats need something. I mean, they obviously...
Where do we begin?
They've run out of ideas and candidates and no money.
They got no money. They got no people. They have no ideas. They produced Donald Trump winning. So
wait a minute. The Democrats produced Donald Trump?
Yes, they did.
You really?
8 years of President Obama.
And
stepping on the middle class.
Produced
a better economy under President Obama, a better stock market.
Well, if it was so dandy, then why didn't Hillary win?
Oh, because I don't think it. I think income inequality to
stock market. What are you talking about?
Thing,
the stock market was never above 21,000 under President Obama.
Oh, where did it start, Kennedy?
It started at like 4.
Yeah. Thank you, Kennedy.
We're going to dig
just
back.
a little memory. Thank you.
But this is why Schumer also is now like dissing Hillary, because Trump is actually even higher in the polls.
I think that this is actually a strategy to get rid of Hillary.
It is.
I think Chuck is just
you guys need you need a villain.
Well, Dana, last word.
Okay. How about any word? I would say a couple things. If you listen to Pod Save America, these are the guys that work for President Obama, and they have a podcast. And this is what they called the new slogan: trash, confusing. And they said, make America great again felt genuine. And this new slogan doesn't have that same feeling. Yep. I also would say, Kimberly, one thing I would quibble with is that it's that they don't have any money, but they have way too many people. Apparently what's happening is in races all across the country, you now have 8 Democrats all vying for like one primary seat. We saw what happened to the Republicans down in Georgia when they had 17. So what's happening is the leaders of the party want to go centrist. Those people that are running want to push left. And so they're going to drag all those candidates left, and then they're not going to be able to compete in what are much more centrist districts.
And you can't have it both ways. They're going to find that out the hard way. One More Thing is up next.
Indeed.
You, baby.
Just you, baby.
It's time now for One More Thing. I'm going to go first. So you want to get excited and inspired about America's youth today? Well, I'm going to show you one reason why. Take a look at Caroline Burke. Here she is. She's right here in our studio visiting today. She babysat Jasper for me on Saturday night, and then I got the sweetest text from her with an entire list of all the things that Jasper did during the course of the night. From 7 to 7:05, Jasper greeted me and was happy to see me. Let's see, they go down. Let's see, at 7:25 to 26, Jasper got a treat for being a good boy, and then he took a nap. He drank a lot of water. He played with her dog, who is Samson, and I just thought this was so creative and responsible and showed a lot of innovation and ensured she will be hired again. So,
and we love lists.
Young people, and yes, I knew that Kimberly would love the list. I knew she would.
This pleases me.
All right, Kimberly, you're next.
All right, thank you so much. So, anybody like sharks?
Yeah.
I love sharks.
Okay, cool. As part of their opening night for Shark Week, I know it was a little disappointing for you, though, Kennedy. We'll talk about that. The Discovery Channel advertised this Olympic swimming legend that Michael Phelps will be racing against a great white shark to determine which of the two is faster in the water. Now, many of the viewers, like Miss Kennedy, were disappointed to learn that Phelps was matched with a computer-generated image of a shark that simulated a real shark's speed. So the robots are taking over. So sadly, he didn't win. He lost the race by 2 points, if you can believe this. A huge disappointment for the humans. And anyway, he finished the 100-meter race in 38 seconds, 2 seconds slower than the simulated shark. And Phelps tweeted Sunday that he'd like a rematch, but in warmer weather.
Well, how about with a real shark, too?
Yeah.
Next time.
Even Fonzie jumped a real shark.
Such a good point.
You guys want blood. I don't get it.
All right, Juan, you're next.
All right, so we were just talking about the Democrats and their new message. If you're interested in understanding the politics behind the new party message, please take a look at my column in the Hill website today. But I've got some other exciting news to share. What a weekend. My son, Rafi, who got engaged last fall to the wonderful Morgan, they had an engagement party this weekend. And guess what? Her parents came down from Connecticut, and the couple's pals from high school and college came from all over the country to celebrate with them. Great time. But look at this. Check this out. The most amazing cake made by my daughter, Reagan.
Wow.
The whole thing is made out of sugar, popcorn included. I was amazed. And the cake, by the way, delicious. Anyway, good luck to the lovely couple.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
All right,
cake.
Jesse.
I never seen that.
So my family, they're all Democrats. My father's a Democrat, my mother, my sister, all Democrats. Even my extended family. My uncle, David Waters, is a state senator in New Hampshire. Look who he met. Maxine Waters.
Whoa.
2 T's versus 1 T. I'm not in the picture. I don't know what's going on. So congratulations. I guess maybe she's going to run for president.
Did he send that to you just for
Yeah, just to rub it in.
Double water.
Gosh, you're really not persuasive, are you?
No, I can't win an
the
argument.
other
You should
way.
see Thanksgiving.
All right, Kennedy.
All right, wrapping it up, pet translators now believe that they are going to develop AI software that will allow you to communicate, to talk to your dog, communicate with your dog, not just with those sad eyes that they so often
Yay,
give us.
Dana.
But and that's my dog, Lemmy. I think right there he's saying I've been overserved. That was at the airport. No, he was quite tired. Whatever.
Tired of drinking.
Wait, how does it work?
It works. It was a study funded by Amazon, and they're going to use various algorithms to interpret what pets are saying and perhaps convert that into speech, so you will be able to talk to your dog.
People are going to be.
What if you find out Jasper doesn't like you?
I know, that would be
Don't give it to Dana.
He's like, Jasper's a Democrat like Jesse's family. Or what if I find out he speaks Hungarian and has never understood a word I've said?
Or he likes Peter
perfect
more.
sense.
Oh, he probably does like Peter more. All right. Set your DVRs. Never miss an episode of The Five. You know what? Hannity's up next.